Okay, quick tutorial on how to cut base toppers from the base slates. The first thing when you open Blender is that you have all the stuff flying around here, and what you usually do is you press A and you press delete. You see the keys I press here to get rid of all of the stuff. Next thing we do is we just drag and drop the STL for the base slate into Blender. Pop-up comes and you just confirm and import the STL. You likely have to zoom out a little bit because the STLs are quite big. The next thing is we want the shape that we cut, which is a cylinder for the base. So we add a mesh cylinder. And immediately after adding it, you have to be careful to not do anything else because there's a tiny pop-up down here that's hidden. And if you click on it, it shows you a lot of information about the cylinder, the radius and the height of it. The radius and the height are not important right now, but the resolution, this vertices here, is the resolution of the cylinder. And you often find online models online that have cylinders with very poor resolution when printed, because Blender defaults to this very tiny resolution for reasons that the models are usually used in games and not for 3D printing. And you want to turn this to like 200 or something, maybe even higher for really, really large bases, but for 32 millimeter bases or something, 200 is okay. Then you press up here and you find the dimensions of the object here. So if you have a 32 millimeters base, you could say 32 millimeters for the cylinder here, and the height doesn't really matter. Let's just go with 16 for now. So we cut all the way through the slate. And it's more convenient to change the size here than down there, because this down there disappears anyway. So I like to change the size of the cylinder here. And you just make sure you set the resolution down there when you create it. So next thing is we want to find a spot to cut out that we like. So we go here to the move tool. And now when you have the cylinder, you can click on this blue square that allows you to move this cutter on this plane that's defined by the blue square. So the axis of X and Y. And we just search for a spot that we want to cut out. We move the cylinder here. And then we select the slate again. We go down here to the modifiers. And we add the modifier generate boolean. This doesn't do anything yet because it wants us to select a target object that it will be doing the cutting with, which will be our cylinder. So we click on the eyedropper and we pick the cylinder. You see that Blender gives you a tiny pop-up that shows you what you're currently selecting. So make sure you hit the cylinder. Now your computer will calculate a little bit depending how fast it is, but you won't see anything changing yet, and that is because the cylinder is still in the way. So you have to press on this tiny eye here to hide the cylinder. And now you can see we just cut out a hole from the slate, which we don't want. So make sure you select the slate again. And in the modifiers, we don't want a difference, we want the intersection. And once you click that, you have your base topper. Now, sometimes you might end up with tiny pieces sticking out of the base topper, depending if you cut something off that's bigger on the side. I don't mind them much because if they're too tiny to stay, they break. I just snap them off after printing. And since this is a ruined base, I don't mind much. If you have a more pristine, more nice base, then you might want to make sure that you don't catch any of these. And to export the STL, you go to File, Export, STL. And the important thing here is that you have to click this here, Selection Only. If you don't do this, it exports the whole scene, so the slate will be just exported again and you won't really see what happened. So this is very important that you click Selection Only, and then you just give it a name, base topper wherever we and you export the STL. And that STL, you know, can pack into your slicer as usual. If you want to change for the position of the cutter now to the next base, what you want to do is like you disable the visibility of the Boolean cutter now, so you see the whole slate again. Then you go back to your cylinder and you make that visible again. You select it, you're still in the move tool, and you just move it to another position. Then you select the slate again, either up in the outline or here in the viewport, and you turn it visible again. You could also like add and remove the modifier every time, but that's just unnecessarily time consuming. So I like to just make it invisible. The reason why we do that is if we move this cylinder, this cutter, while the modifier is still visible and actively being calculated, this will be very laggy and it's not really easy to select what you want with that. So I find it better to just select the slate and just disable the visibility. Mind you that you don't click the camera, that is like the visibility for rendering, and that is the visibility in the viewport. So we care about the visibility in the viewport here. And once you got that, you can either hide your cylinder, but you don't even have to do that if you want to be extra fast making bases. You can just select the slate in it, and you can again file, export STL. And since we go with exporting the selection only anyways, it will only take this new base topper. So you don't even have to hide the cylinder really, but of course you likely want to hide it to see what kind of base topper you cut out there. Yep, that's it.